Feeding our babies really healthy and nutrient-dense foods to help their growing brains and bodies has always been really important to me. But let's face it, the stuff that you get from the store is not health promoting and it doesn't do a whole lot for their bodies. It's time to throw out our store-bought baby food and start making our own. These precious little people's bodies and brains are just way too important to trust to large food corporations that are really only worried about their profit. Today I'm going to show you how I've fed 10 children who have gone on to become very healthy young adults and how we're feeding baby Nathaniel right now. Hey, I'm Carolyn from Homesteading Family, and this is baby Nathaniel. If you're interested in learning how to live a healthier, more free, and more secure lifestyle, then make sure you hit the subscribe button below. If you're already subscribed, but you haven't been seeing our videos in your feed, sometimes that happens. Check the bell notification and make sure it's turned on. Also, make sure you hit like on any one of our videos that you do see so that it tells the algorithm to make sure to keep showing you our videos. Babies have really quickly growing bodies and brains, and so it's really crucial that we nourish both of them during their early years. In their earliest days, breast milk is absolutely the best. So you want to make sure you're focusing on your very own nutrition as a mom and feeding your babies often with wonderful breast milk. But when babies start getting to about 6 months old, they start running out of iron, which can stall their growth and make them anemic if you're not careful. We don't want anemic babies. If you want to see some of the studies that have been done on this, you can go ahead and click over to the blog post that I have attached, and I'll have some citations for you. So it's important to start feeding your babies really high quality food when they get somewhere around that 6-month mark. When they're at 6 months, something like a little bit of egg yolk off of your own plate, just dabbed into their mouth, starts giving them a little bit of nutrition and giving them a little bit of flavor. As they get a little bit older, we need to start increasing that amount of food and the amount of food that they're being fed and they're eating, and the diversity, so that they start getting even more nutrients into their bodies. Now that's a moment to wait for the babies to cue that they're ready to actually start eating. Some of those cues are reaching for your food or mimicking chewing, and they definitely need to have lost that gag reflex where when you put something in their mouth, they just spit it right back out. As soon as that happens, you can start feeding your babies a little bit more advanced foods and start to feed them more often. Babies, when they get to a little bit past the year mark, at least in my household, I expect that they're going to transition to kind of eating what we're eating for meals. But between that 6-month mark and that year mark, you kind of have this window where they need a little bit of a specialized diet to really start kicking them off and then keep their growth strong and steady and make sure their brains are developing to their full potential. So that's what we're talking about in this video. Here I am in the root cellar, and I'm going to pull out some of these great carrots that have been stored. They're just tucked in here under the storm doors of our basement. It's not a technical root cellar, but it works really well. Here we have crates that are filled with our root vegetables from our summer garden. Some of them are a little dirty. We're going to get them all cleaned up, and they're packed in shavings right now to keep them insulated and to keep them good. And these will last like this all the way until spring, just ready to grab. So I love this. Let's start off with a base of different animal proteins. Things like wild caught fresh salmon is amazing for all of its wonderful proteins that it has in it. Good quality chicken. This is our very own farm-raised chicken that is completely chemical-free and raised out on pasture with sunshine and bugs and grass and all those good things. This is really important to make sure that you get the highest quality proteins that you possibly can when you're feeding a baby. Liver is an absolute superfood when it comes to feeding babies. Really high quality again. Grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, and probably one of the easiest things to get that is super, super rich in all sorts of great nutrients for your baby is really good quality egg yolks. That would also count. Pretty much as important as good protein sources with iron in it comes really good fat sources. Now, fat is responsible for all sorts of amazing growth and development in your baby's bodies. Your baby's brains absolutely need fat. And this is why breast milk is so rich in fat. It's an absolutely amazing source of good quality fat. So make sure even when you start feeding your baby solid foods that you're still feeding them at the breast. We also want to get vegetables into their diets. These pack a great punch when it comes to a variety of nutrients and minerals, and those are so important. Remember, just like adults, you want to make sure that you're eating the rainbow. So you want green things. Things like green beans or broccoli are absolutely amazing for your babies. Steer away from leafy greens. Those are really, really hard to digest. So let them get a little bit older before you go to actual leafy greens. We have beets. These are our own from our garden also. These have just been lightly steamed. They are nicely ready to go. And then you have something like a pumpkin or a winter squash. One thing that I do like to do is also have some really high quality fruit items, but I don't like to depend on it. Unlike commercial baby foods where you see a majority of fruit-based foods or grain-based foods, we want to make sure that we make those the minority. They're the little bits of dessert. How would your body feel if you just ate fruit all the time? Your blood sugar would probably be a wreck. You'd probably be cranky and fussy and probably have tummy upsets. So make sure while you do involve fruit in the diet, you don't do too much fruit in the diet, just little bits here and there. But steer away from citrus foods as those can cause allergic reactions and digestive problems for young babies. As you're making baby food, you're gonna find that you're gonna have to thin it out a little bit to get it to blend up properly. So let's talk about the liquids that we can use for thinning down our baby foods. Now, of course, if you're talking about a vegetable, you can use the water that the vegetables were cooked or steamed in, and that'll just help get a little of those nutrients that were lost in the water back into the baby food. But there's some other really great options too. One of them is a really good quality bone broth. Now this is a chicken bone broth that we have actually going in the kitchen right now. Breast milk is another great thing to thin out your baby food with. Again, it's an absolute superfood. We want to keep getting it into the baby's diet as long as we can. Another great thing to thin your baby food out with is a probiotic source like a sauerkraut juice. Now this is our homemade sauerkraut. We consume this pretty much every single day in our house. We have at least a fork full of it, but it's got this great juice or brine right at the top. And this is absolutely packed filled with enzymes, with probiotics, with all sorts of amazing vitamins. And so this is a superfood to get into your baby's food. It's also great to get them used to the flavor of a little bit of fermented food while they're a baby. Okay, now one last ingredient that is super important and we don't want to miss, and that is a good quality salt. Good quality mineralized salt is super important for your health. First of all, it has chlorides in it, and this is so important for the correct development of hydrochloric acid in your gut to be able to properly digest your foods, especially these proteins and these fats. So don't skip out on this. When it comes to making baby food, my personal preference is to make a couple batches of baby food a couple times during the week based on the meals that we have when we have good quality ingredients on hand. But if you want to get ahead, you can definitely make up your baby food and then put it into ice cube trays and pop it into the freezer. This makes a really quick to grab, really easy baby food for later in the week. Baby food will stay fresh and in good quality for about 3 days in the refrigerator. Now, when babies are really young and they're just starting to eat, you're gonna wanna make a really smooth puree. But as they start getting older, they start being able to handle more and more texture. And indeed, you want to get more and more texture into their bodies so they get used to chewing and swallowing chunkier things so that they're ready to transition over to just eating family meals by the time they're about a year and a half old. to 2 years old, depending on the child. For baby Nathaniel, who right now is about 10 months old, I'm gonna go somewhere in between perfectly smooth and a little bit chunky. I wanna give you a few examples of the types of baby food that I would make. Here I have chicken from a roast chicken that we had last night, and I went ahead and saved a combination of dark meat and breast meat. So I'm just gonna put that right in here. You're gonna need some sort of a machine to blend this all up. A blender would work really well. An immersion blender can work really well. But if you're making smaller amounts, something like this little KitchenAid is really handy. I'm gonna put in these green beans. These have been well cooked because they've come through the pressure canner. You definitely want to focus on cooked foods for small children. Raw foods are actually really challenging to digest for our bodies, so we want to start babies off almost primarily on cooked foods and well-cooked foods. For the fat in this, I'm actually going to be skimming the fat off the top of this very warm and fresh bone broth. That'll be an amazing quality chicken fat. I'm also going to be pouring more in just to make this blendable. And I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. We want just a sprinkling of salt, just like you would season food for yourself. And let's blend it all up. I gotta say, this is not the most beautiful looking food ever. Maybe not super appetizing. But when I'm making the baby food, I always make sure to take a test myself and make sure it tastes good. That is absolutely delicious, actually. It tastes like green beans and chicken. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and just put it in a little bowl. And for me, I'm just gonna cover this and get this into the refrigerator. I'm going to give him a little bit of this every time we sit down for a meal, either this or one of the other foods that we're gonna make today. And there you have something that is healthier, more nutrient dense, and absolutely delicious. It's better than anything you can get in the grocery store. Okay, let's try another one. This is one of Nathaniel's absolute favorite foods. He absolutely loves pumpkin, and I love how good it is for him. So it works out really well for us. I just have my own homegrown pumpkins here, and I just cooked them and then pureed them. I don't tend to add much sugar or sweetener at all into baby food. I just don't feel like they need it, and it helps them not to develop too much of a sweet tooth. But you could, if you wanted, you could add a little bit of either maple syrup here, a rice syrup if you wanted. But of course, for babies, you need to stay away from honey and anything refined. I would stay far away from anything refined. That would include something like agave syrup. That is definitely refined. To my pumpkin puree, I'm just gonna add a little bit of really good virgin coconut oil. This is gonna bring in those really great quality fats and really help out his little brain to develop very well. Something that he likes particularly is a little bit of pumpkin pie type spices in his pumpkin. I like that too, so I'm fully on board. So that's just a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg, maybe a little allspice in there, just a tiny bit. And then of course we do want a little bit of salt. It's just gonna make everything taste better, and it's so good for him. Okay, we're gonna blend it right up. Oh, that smells so good. So again, make sure you take a test. Absolutely delicious. And you can see that that actually worked up really, really quickly, especially if you already have some of these ingredients out because you're making them into a dinner. This goes really fast. Let's do another one. Beets are another serious superfood in the kitchen, but when you start combining it with really healthy fats, really good quality salt, and some sauerkraut juice, it really moves up to a whole nother level. But then I have one other secret ingredient that we're gonna add that I absolutely love. These beets have just been peeled and steamed until they are nice and tender. I don't have a protein source particularly in this one, and we're gonna make up for that with something else that I like to use in the kitchen. Now this is just a little bit of our good quality goose fat, but you could use a really good quality home rendered lard instead. Of course you could use a good butter. Now we're gonna add a little bit of this sauerkraut juice, just enough to make it blend. And the beets actually work really well with the fermented juice because the sweetness of the beets just really helps to offset the sourness of the ferment, which is amazing. Of course, we want a little bit of salt. Nice little pinch just to taste. Then we need our secret ingredient. Oftentimes when we're cooking dinner and I make liver, I know a lot of people don't eat liver, but it's a great thing to get into your diet. I'll take a little bit of the cooked liver and I'll stash it in the freezer to be able to crumble it into things like that. But at this moment, I don't have any liver, so I want to show you my cheat that I use. And this is freeze-dried organ meat. And I use the pure kind. It has no additional seasonings. Freeze-dried and powdered liver, spleen, kidney, heart, and pancreas. You guys, all of these are absolute superfoods. Just sprinkling them lightly into the food is going to add so much nutrition right into your baby's diet. And now we're gonna blend it all up. Ooh, this color is beautiful. Wow, it is very, very bright red. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. That is so good. And now one last one that is absolutely amazing, and this is gonna be a salmon carrot baby food. This is just a wild caught salmon, and I just baked it in the oven. It's very well baked. This is a little bit more done than I would want it if I were personally just eating it. But the important part is to make sure that you get that skin in there too. I wouldn't give an ocean fish to a baby more than once a week, just because it does have higher levels of mercury and different things like that in it from being in the ocean. And then we have those carrots that we got out of the root cellar earlier. We just peeled them, chopped them, and steamed them up. They're actually still nice and hot. And then for both the fat and the liquid, I'm gonna go ahead and put in some good grass-fed raw butter. And with the carrots already being pretty warm, it's gonna melt in there and soften right on up. If I puree this and I feel like it's not getting as soft as I'd like, I'd go ahead and add a little bit of that bone broth right to it. And then of course, a little pinch of salt right over the top. And we're ready to just zip it up. This is definitely a little bit thicker than the other ones and a little bit chunkier, and that's just fine. But if your baby needs a softer, more pureed food, go ahead and add a little bit more liquid to it and go from there. Ooh, that smells really good. It smells like salmon. Gosh, these are all so good. They're absolutely delicious. Now you have these amazing different options. If you're interested in more recipes, more baby food, you can definitely jump over to the blog post that it's attached to this video. I'll put the link below in the description, and I'll have some different ideas for you, including some no-cook baby food recipes, but these are absolutely delicious. If you want to make some extra and store them in the freezer, you just go ahead and pack these into an ice cube tray, freeze them solid, and then within a day you can pop those out and store them in some sort of container in your freezer. Here we have some that we did a couple of days ago. I don't prefer to do it this way, but it is nice to have some on hand for backup for those really busy weeks and really busy days. Once these are in your freezer, they'll last really nicely for up to 3 months. When you're ready to defrost them, you just grab a couple of the cubes, stick them in a container in your refrigerator overnight, or if you're in a hurry, you can go ahead and put them in some sort of a container and put them in a little bit of warm water to heat them up really quickly. There you have it. Really easy way to make really nutrient dense and amazing foods. And if you want to learn more about how to raise responsible, happy children on your homestead who love homesteading, make sure you check out this video right here. Hey, look who just woke up from their nap. You want to try some yummies? So yummy.